Hi, everyone. My name is Jay Conti, and with me is my colleague, Nicole Johnson. We're speaking on behalf of all of the members of IDEA 67, and we're excited to show you how artificial intelligence can revolutionize the way Canadians access government resources. Like most of us, you've probably struggled to search for information on Government of Canada websites at some point in time. Many of our sites have search functions built into them, but most of these are designed using keyword-based search software, which has considerable limitations. Search functions are kind of like translators, interpreting your input and doing their best to match it with the right content. The problem with keyword search functions is that they're not very good translators because they have an extremely limited vocabulary. As soon as you start using terms other than their built-in keywords, it's like you're speaking a different language. They can't understand you. For instance, this is AgPal, Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada's website designed to help users find government supports. It's the only tool of its kind for the agriculture sector, a one-stop shop bringing information on more than 3,000 federal, provincial, and territorial resources into one place. Frankly, it is a terrific website with one weak link, its search function. Searching the site, you regularly encounter two kinds of problems. The first and perhaps most frustrating is when little to no relevant results are returned for a search. Imagine, for instance, searching for help hiring workers and only receiving one slightly related result, despite there being multiple useful resources available within the website. The second issue is when an overwhelming number of irrelevant results appear. Consider searching for buying new tech for energy efficiency and receiving over 2,000 results, most of which have little or nothing to do with what you're looking for. To help address these challenges, the designers of AgPal have developed a Help Searching AgPal page that guides visitors through the best way to use the limited search function. But even with this knowledge, it's often challenging to find what you need, and all of this is very time-consuming and frustrating for the user who just wants to find the information they're looking for. We're not the only ones who've identified AgPal's search function as an issue. User feedback shows that searchability is a problem and that many respondents would not recommend the site, to others until it's fixed. At our first hackathon for this project, and we'll tell you more about these shortly, we received similar feedback from industry representatives where they expressed frustration that a tool with so much potential was so hard to use. This is where artificial intelligence comes in. A kind of AI called natural language processing can act as a fluent translator between you and the website, interpreting whatever you put into the search box to match you with the best results. This way, it's much, much easier for you to find what you're looking for, because you don't have to conform your search to the keywords to get good results. You can use whatever language is most natural to you, and the AI does the rest of the work. We've built a basic search function using natural language processing and have called it AgPal Plus. Let's see how it works when we search for help hiring workers. If you recall, the existing search function returned only one somewhat related result, but with AgPal Plus, there's a huge improvement. Most of the key government resources are now showing up, including links to hiring workers through the Temporary Foreign Worker Program, an agriculture job connector, and a variety of resources to help employers with best hiring practices. Let's also retry the search for buying new tech for energy efficiency, which produced more than 2,000 results on the existing site. As you can see, even though this search is made up of rather imprecise language, we get strong results with AgPal Plus, with most of our top 10 being directly related to the search, and only a few quirky returns that still need to be ironed out. So I want to pause here just to make it clear that this is a preview of the tool's potential, and that AgPal Plus is by no means a finished product at this time. It will not yet return results of this quality for every search, and there are still many limitations and issues we need to overcome. We're happy to discuss these during the Q&A session. But we're confident that we've started to build a tool that can consistently yield results that even exceed what we've just shown you now. We only had 3 months of part-time work for this stage of the challenge, so recognizing that we'd never complete AgPal Plus in that time, we dedicated a considerable portion of our efforts to working within the department to lay the groundwork to drive the project across the finish line. So I'm going to pass it over to Nicole to tell you more about that.
Okay, thanks, Jay. So while none of us on this team here today work directly on AgPal, we've been working closely with those who do, and they've been very collaborative, providing us with terrific guidance on the work they've done to date, including sharing all their user data and surveys. They're keenly interested in the results of our efforts. We've also been working closely with our Office of the Chief Data Officer. They're very interested in our project since it aligns so well with the work they're doing around AI. In collaboration with them, we held a hackathon last month on how we could use natural language processing to improve AgPal. 2 of our ADMs attended the event along with people from across the department, industry representatives, and experts from Algonquin College's AI program. We spent the day wrapping our heads around these new tools and how they might be applied to the site. We were also experimenting on a natural language processing chatbot, which we'd be also happy to tell you about at the Q&A. So at present, our best estimate is that it would take 2 full-time equivalent data scientists about 12 to 18 months to build a version of AgPal Plus that would be ready to launch. There would also be some software costs associated with the project. Right now, we'll put a rough cost estimate at $200,000 to $400,000 to develop the tool. That said, recognizing our lack of precision here, we're in the process of planning our second hackathon, bringing most of these parties back together, plus additional AI experts from the Government of Canada to look specifically at what resources are needed to develop a fully functioning version of a search tool that we've previewed for you here today. So in short, we don't have a fully fleshed out business plan at present, but we hope to show you that we have shown you that 1, we've learned a lot already, 2, that we have a solid plan in place to secure the remaining information we need, and 3, that we've already fostered a significant interest in our project among senior management within the department. Finally, what does the government get for these investments? It gets the immediate benefit of dramatically improving the effectiveness of AgPal. With AgPal Plus, we can turn that search function from a weakness into a strength, which unlocks the site's potential. Importantly, it means that smaller businesses that may have limited to no administrative resources, who may not have time or energy to navigate the existing site, now have a much better chance at finding and applying for the resources they need. This provides the government an opportunity to reach diverse applicants seeking support, more young business owners who are likely to turn to digital first, more first-time program users, and more small businesses, which may include more women and other underrepresented groups. These lessons can also be shared across the Government of Canada to potentially transform a variety of search tools. And this is really where we think the biggest opportunity lies. Many of the government search functions, like AgPal, currently rely on keywords. These feel outdated and can be frustrating to use. Natural language processing provides an opportunity to radically improve these tools, and therefore an opportunity to radically improve how we serve the Canadian public. We'd like to capture that opportunity. Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. All right, now I think we all know Statistics Canada has the worst search engine, so maybe Wes wants to start off.
Thanks, David. So Wesley Young from Statistics Canada. Thanks for this presentation. It's really interesting. I think it does. There is a need out there. In particular, we have to help the agriculture community and so forth. I didn't really have any Uh, well, I'll just come up with a question. So, what you're telling me, and going back to what David said, is that we have a terrible search engine at StatCan. So I wonder, how can Google do such a good job, and other search engines? I don't want to just say Google. Okay, all the other. Do you know if they're using NLP? And so, and this may be getting too much in the weeds, but that's what I enjoy. Like, are you using NLP to come up with keywords and then use a keyword search engine, or is it completely different? So if you don't have the answer, that's fine. But I guess my real question is Google using something similar?
Guys, I'll take a crack at kind of a high level response, and then I'll pass it over to Henry, who's been the technical expert on our team and who has really done some terrific work building the prototype that we shared with you. So Google obviously has enormous resources to commit to their search function. It's their primary product, and they're in an incredibly competitive marketplace. So there are huge incentives to commit those resources. So Henry could speak probably in greater detail than I can to how their search function actually works, but I would imagine it involves multiple different kinds of tools all coming together that they're constantly working to optimize. And from our perspective, I think we recognize that the government of Canada has significantly fewer resources than Google. We also don't have the same kind of incentive structure because we're not in a competitive marketplace for sharing this kind of information. So generally, we don't commit the kinds of resources to these products. What we really think is a terrific opportunity here is that natural language processing in particular is kind of like a cheat code that can allow the government to catch up in these areas relatively quickly. So traditionally building a search function to complement a website, if you don't have many resources, it's a very challenging project and it's really hard to do it well. But some of these new AI tools will allow us to make considerable advances in these areas relatively quickly. And so we see them as an opportunity, kind of a cheap win in a way, even though it's $200,000 to $400,000 is not a tiny sum of money, but it's kind of a cheap win to improve customer service and get much closer to the user experience that somebody has going to Google than what we can currently offer. So Henry, I don't know if you want to jump in and maybe answer some of the more technical components to the question.
Oh, we can't hear you, Henry.
Don't have your mic there, Henry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, yeah.
Okay. As everybody know, Google is a huge like international company with technical experts. And over the years, they contributed quite a lot in the research community for the development of numerous algorithms. And then one of the key algorithm that they introduced in 2017 is called Transformer. Transformer basically is a cost-effective way to train deep neural network that allows machines to understand the contextual meanings of long text much more cost-effectively. And Google does use some transformers to help boost their search performance. And actually, in our current prototype, we do adopt like similar models. Our model is much smaller, but we're using we're applying similar principles. And Google does have so many different like algorithms to rank their web pages. Their algorithm is different from ours, but we do apply the same principle that they do to a certain extent for the natural language processing tasks.
Thank you.
I can go. I'm Elise Lejeune. I'm the Chief Data Officer at Agriculture, so I know a little bit about this project. Thank you. You did a great presentation. I have two small comments, and I think it's more about the scalability, but also the transferability of this project to other. I think that's an important aspect of the project. It's very much agriculture focused right now, but the technology is agnostic on the domain, I would expect. So that's my first point. And the other point is about part of the frustration when you're searching and you get those results is also whether or not they're applicable to you as the searcher. So have you guys thought about some of those narrowing characteristics such as location, for example, because you talked about the fact that it lists all sorts of programs regardless of where you are in Canada with the provinces and other partners. So I'm just thinking, like, you've shown something quite amazing that's been put together in a few months on the side of your desk, and I'm just thinking, like, what are the other ideas that are coming out and other applications that you could see?
Sure. So maybe I'll start with the first one, the first question that you had, Elise, in terms of how do we scale this to other opportunities within the government. I think really what we're hoping to do with the next hackathon that we're starting to plan is to get subject matter experts in the room to look. When we had our first hackathon, the idea was kind of how quickly can we actually build a real tool so that we could wow the judges during this presentation. And we learned a lot doing that. And now we've realized that there are real limitations to trying to do something so quickly. So now we're going to step back and have a really thorough look at, okay, what would we have to invest in to bring such a product all the way to completion? And a big part of that is looking at it. A lot of people are using NLP for a variety of different reasons, but using them within a government context presents all kinds of challenges, right? There's the two languages, there's private information, there's all kinds of standards that we have as a government. So for the second hackathon, we want to be looking at it through that lens. And I think we want to be, as part of those discussions, we want to be thinking not just about AgPal, but if we were to build the platform for AgPal, how can we build it in a way that it's also conducive to other applications and doesn't just have this narrow and specific focus? So that'll be part of our intention. And I think the truth is we just don't really know for certain. We won't know until we start really exploring those questions in detail, but it certainly will be part of what we want to prioritize. And the second question, right? So right now, something we didn't show you within the existing tool, they have, in addition to the search feature, AgPal has a bunch of different filter boxes that you can apply. It's a different way to navigate resources within the site, and they present their own kinds of challenges. They're a little bit awkward to get used to. I think one of the things that we're hoping to do, and some of these filter boxes would be provincially, right? So you could, if you're in Ontario and you're a hog farmer, you could click Ontario and you could click hog, and it will start narrowing your research that way. What we would like to ultimately get the search function to do is that people can just enter that information into the search function. So you don't have to search and then be adding filter boxes on top of it. You could just say hog farmer, Ontario, whatever you're looking for, and the search is able to digest all of that information and just quickly present you with the results that are most relevant to you. And then just lastly and quickly, we mentioned very briefly in the presentation that as part of our first hackathon, we were also experimenting a bit with a chat bot that's powered by natural language processing. And we haven't talked much about that, but we think there's likewise really large opportunities there where you could potentially complete your search on AgPal, you get a variety of results, but naturally people are going to still have all kinds of questions about that information once it's displayed. Some of it could be what here is most relevant to my specific needs, but others could be, here's the temporary foreign worker program, which I've never heard of. What is that? Could somebody tell me a little bit more about it? And there are opportunities, we think, with a chatbot at that stage of the user engagement to be able to act as something like a bit of a personal assistant to just help you navigate the results and answer exactly those kinds of questions that a user would naturally have when they're presented with information that they're not familiar with. Henry, do you want to jump in on this one?
Right. And for the first question, our solution is designed so that it's fully scalable and integrates with the current technology stack of AgPal. We look into the design and make sure that what we build can be applied to AgPal. And regarding second question, we see that there are potentially many features that we could have that we could add to AgPal. So basically, AgPal is missing. We think AgPal is missing certain feature that user would like to have. Like you can see that we can't really do search full questions really effectively. The understanding of the contextual information is lacking. No auto suggest, no spell checks, etc. We think that there's a lot of potential to make this tool much more user friendly and like much more useful to the agriculture people working in agriculture.
So thanks very much. Look, Derek Dobson, I'm from Microsoft. I share your excitement over the inclusion of natural language processing into search capabilities, etc. And I love the explanation you've given also into that interaction that you can have with the user for a discussion-based learning sort of approach through your chatbot. I'm really enthused by the fact that there's real scalability across the Government of Canada from the public servants' perspective and the interaction with Citizens for Services. Can you talk to that last bit a bit more? So if we're talking about the outcomes, rather than, I mean, it's an incredibly beneficial, rich experience the user will get. How do we actually get to an outcome as far as the connection with programs and supports are concerned? And how will you measure, having achieved something that really is meaningful beyond a good experience?
Great, thanks for the question. So one of the metrics that AgPal is currently tracking, which we didn't mention in the presentation, but when you receive a result, each result provides a very high level view of what the programmer support is. And there's an option to click for more information. You get a slightly expanded version of that. And then there's an option to actually click through to the link that houses the home program page or support page or whatever the resource is. And so right now they track the number of clicks to expand results. They also track the number of clicks to click through to resources. And the numbers aren't terrific. And this would certainly be one of the areas that we would be looking to increase engagement. So, if the tool does what we intend it to do, then we would imagine that we'd see people expanding information on many more results, and we'd see many more users clicking through to the actual link where the resource is housed. And from our perspective, that's the clearest bit of evidence that you're going to have that people are actually getting what they're looking for, right? Because they've clicked through to where they can apply for the service in question. And then in addition to that, we think there's a bunch of opportunities to capture better data. For instance, if you track everything that goes into a search box that works quite well, you can start to see where searches aren't returning any strong results. And that potentially provides you an opportunity to identify a program gap where the government actually just doesn't have a program that meets somebody's needs. Because if it keeps coming up in the search, but there isn't something there, that gives you a chance to use that data to potentially tailor program design to close that gap. So that's another major area. And yeah, we think in general, it's more than just the user experience. If it works better, you have a good opportunity to bring new program users in, which you could measure. You can bring more diverse program users in, which you can measure. You can really get a good sense of the demographics and the effect that the tool is having on who's applying for what.
Hi, I'm Lucie Loignon. I'm the Chief Information Officer of Environment and Climate Change and OIC. Were you done answering this question? Because Henry's hand is still up. Henry, did you?
Oh, Henry, is that a old hand there or a fresh one?
I can just elaborate a little bit more. Currently, the AgPal doesn't have a way to measure how relevant the search results are. And in our solution, we build a interface that allow users to flag which of the search results are relevant and which are irrelevant. So that way we can measure what percentage of the return search results are actually relevant and what's the percentage of all the relevant results that have been retrieved by the search engine. So we are adding more we can add more quantitative measure to measure the performance of AgPal.
So thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. So one of my question, because you seem to be hopping along quite well, you've done a hackathon, you're planning to do another one, you've developed already AgPal Plus. So what is really your biggest challenge and how do you plan to overcome it? And then my other question is, everybody in the government and in the private sector is trying to improve their search engine. And I was wondering if you, before on embarking on this journey, if you have done some kind of an environmental scan within the government to see Who has the best search engine, perhaps, or like who else is trying to do the same thing and maybe partner with you? Thank you.
Okay, thanks for the question. So on the second component, yeah, we've had a variety of conversations with people across the government, some of whom are working on natural language processing in a variety of areas, and some who are responsible for other similar platforms like AgPal. We had some really good conversations with the folks at Innovation Canada who run the Business Benefit Finder, for instance, which we thought was a really great tool. And they've structured it in a way that they're not using any artificial intelligence, and it works quite well. But they're likewise very interested in the same opportunities that we're trying to pursue. So we'll be following up with them once we make our way a little bit farther down the road. And then we had some great conversations. There was some folks with NRCan who were involved with the Public Service Data Challenge. They specialize in artificial intelligence. We talked with them several times. And one of the conversations was specifically about who's using natural language processing for what. And there's a lot of experimenting going on across the government right now. But generally speaking, it falls into a somewhat different category, which is people are using it, for instance, if you have very large volumes of data that you need to digest and pull some conclusions from, you can use natural language processing to assess all of that data and start to pull out relevant information. But the conclusions of that information are mostly being used internally for policy or program decisions. We haven't found anybody yet. I won't say for certain that there isn't anybody doing it, but we haven't found anybody yet who's trying to use natural language processing for this specific purpose, which is customer service. And we think that there's huge potential there. And that really ultimately what I hope we accomplish at the end of this is persuading senior managers that there's value in investing in NLP for customer service and building expertise within the government to do that work ourselves and share those lessons across the various departments. A lot of this kind of work is contracted at the moment, and we think it's such a huge opportunity, and there's all these new tools and new kinds of AI that are rolling out to the general public right now. Very rapidly, you're going to see more and more of it in the private sector, and the expectation of Canadians is going to be that we deliver the same kinds of products. So we think now is the time to really wrap our heads around what these tools can do and start making some progress ourselves.
Okay, thanks, Jay. So that's the end of the 15 minutes we had dedicated for question and answer. Did you have a burning question you want to get in?
I did.
Go for it.
My name is Jason Reid. I'm the Chief Information Officer at Natural Resources Canada. So great presentation. I just wanted to see if you had engaged the principal publisher, which resides in Service Canada, ESDC. They're responsible for the Canada.ca website. I noticed, my little experience in understanding this stuff, metadata is huge, and so how you structure your website and the repeatability of it is something important. I noticed AgPal wasn't following the Canada sort of look and feel, and so I was wondering if the metadata isn't standardized, then your solution isn't transportable to others that are. The other point that I wanted to raise is because you're going to be influencing, you're providing a service to Canadians, and it will be influencing their decisions as to what services they want to interact with. You're going to have to, according to the directive on artificial intelligence, you're going to have to actually have your algorithm peer reviewed. And so just some considerations that are there, and you might want to line up the right groups to do that. But overall, it looks really promising, but I'm just curious to see if you've engaged ESDC and have given any thoughts on the peer review piece.
Do we have time for a very quick response to that?
Sure you do.
Okay, great. So the short answer is no. No, we haven't engaged with them yet. And AgPal is a very different kind of search engine than Canada.ca. And to your point, which is dealing with very large volumes of data. So there are 3,000 discrete resources that are housed within AgPal's website, which in some ways makes it a little bit easier for us because you can put all that in one place and organize the data so that the NLP can process it efficiently. It makes it a little bit harder in some ways because it's a limited data set for the NLP to mine through. I think this is the kind of thing where we would recognize if you were going to take lessons from what we could potentially accomplish with AgPal and apply them to other platforms within the government of Canada, something like Canada.ca would be kind of further down the spectrum there. It would be there certainly still could be lessons that would be learned, but just given that you're dealing with a very different kind of search engine, that would have to be taken into consideration. And it's possible that there would be some considerable limitations in terms of what we learn with AgPal for Canada.ca. But it's a great question, and I think we'll certainly add them to our list of people to consult with, and we can start having those conversations with them. Nicole?
Yeah, and to your second question on the peer review, yes, we definitely would want to be transparent with our AI algorithm. We would want it to be peer reviewed, to be able to have, highlight if, all the principles of data ethics. If there was any inherent bias, we would want to be able to be aware of anything that could come through. So we would want to be transparent, and we would definitely want any insight that group would have on the evaluation of that algorithm.
Excellent. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for the presentation and for all your great answers to these questions. And with that, we will bid you adieu until next time.